Hello, and welcome to the SBA, the Tropical Storm Eta Recovery webinar. I am Mary Burrell. I am the whole community engagement program lead for Pinellas County Emergency Management. Thank you for joining us. First, some housekeeping items. I need you to know that this webinar is being recorded. Questions are welcome. There is a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. We will leave time at the end for questions, but we will also take them during the program. During the program, your microphone will be muted and your video will remain off. This webinar will also be posted on Pinellas County YouTube channel for future reference. The link and additional resources will be sent to you to share with others. Tonight, we want to share some facts about the SBA Disaster Assistance Loan Program. We also want to point out that the SBA program presents an opportunity to help you plan ahead to help prepare for future flooding events. Now, back in November, Hurricane Eta weakened to Tropical Storm Eta by the time it moved into Pinellas County. It made landfall near Cedar Key around 4 a.m. Thursday, November 12th. Throughout that night, the rain was pouring down and high tides caused a lot of local flooding, ran into the neighborhoods, and covered Gulf Boulevard. In the morning, everybody woke up to assess the damage. We have documented 2,941 homes impacted by Tropical Storm Eta here in Pinellas County alone. Over 416 of those homes had at least 18 inches of water. I want to introduce Hank Hottie. He is Pinellas County Sustainability and Resiliency Coordinator. Thank you, Hank, for being here.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to those at home or at work, here and afar, that are joining this webinar tonight to find ways to move forward on the situation. You know, I'm often asked, what does recovery mean for Pinellas County with a local disaster like this, and how should we move forward? In most disasters, we rely on many partners and resources, but how we approach recovery is ultimately up to us. It's a local issue, and it starts local. Since this is a more localized event, it needs to be locally driven, and we're seeing that here. As you're aware, we don't see FEMA personnel walking around or contractors and volunteers everywhere like after other major disasters around the country that get attention of the network news and donations and a pouring in of resources. But we do have the SBA as a resource now that you're going to hear about, and it's up to us of what we make of it and how to propel us forward and be more resilient, or the ability to prepare and to bounce back and to overcome adverse events. We need to mitigate for now and the future. We've experienced this event. We know what our potential impacts could be from a tropical storm, and just imagine what a big Cat 2 or 3 or even worse could do. So we need to include mitigation features into our activities moving forward and rebuilding and construction, so that we're at less risk next time. And we need to use this experience to best position ourselves, you and your family, for the next event, because there will be another one. We're trying to do what we can to serve you as public officials, to help the community be more resilient and sustainable, and for now and into the future. And we want to work together and partner on that moving forward. So I hope you all find something valuable in this webinar, and that we can be of assistance to you tonight. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Hank. As Hank had mentioned, it was recently announced that Pinellas County residents who were impacted by Tropical Storm Eta were eligible for the SBA low interest loan program. And this was great news for us. It's a great opportunity. SBA is not just for businesses. It's not just for repairing damages. There's more to that. Very excited that we have Roberto Baltodano here from the SBA program. Robert is the public affairs specialist for the SBA, works with the disaster assistance for businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to play a 1-minute video first as an introduction to you. So
you, Mary, and thank you for sharing that opportunity to share this rather with your constituents. Let me play that 1-minute video that is going to set up the grounds, if you will, for the conversation that's coming up.
An idea, a concept, a plan, a dream. That's how businesses start. With the help of the U.S. Small Business Administration, businesses transform from a home office to a global operation, a double oven setup to a 6-person bakery, concept to manufacturing, and from contemplating closure to not just surviving, but thriving. That's the power of the SBA. We make small business our business by being an ally, an advocate, a mentor, a coach, an educator, a friend to ambitious and passionate entrepreneurs. And we're igniting change, sparking action, so businesses across the nation can confidently start, grow, expand, and recover. SBA, empowering small businesses, empowering the American dream.
And so that is basically what the SBA does on a daily basis is exactly that. We're mentors, we're coaches, we're your friend, if you will, in terms of guiding you, particularly the business community, on how to succeed, particularly how to recover after a disaster. And so next I'm going to share, if I may, the presentation. We're going to be talking about how the SBA is providing assistance, as Mary mentioned, about in response to Tropical Storm Eta. And so a big misconception about the SBA is our name. The fact that we're named U.S. Small Business Administration doesn't mean that we help only the U.S. small business community. We provide assistance to individuals, to homeowners and renters. And so this presentation is directed to the community at large, business owners and individuals. And so thank you again to the Pinellas County Emergency Management Agency and the county itself for offering this excellent opportunity to address the community. And most importantly, to those of you who are listening and seeing this webinar today. We hope that the information that we're going to give you, as Hank said, turns into an actionable type of information, something that you can utilize to either apply for help and get that assistance that you need, or most importantly, take some information out to make you a much more resilient, rather, for when the next disaster comes. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the SBA, but the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance. So you'll have the SBA offices that are help you, that provide assistance on a day-to-day basis, then the Office of Disaster Assistance. Obviously, what we came here to talk about, which is the available programs and services available in response to Tropical Storm Eta. Obviously, I'm going to encourage you to apply and to get that assistance. And last but not least, I'm going to leave you with some resources that I'm going to mention throughout, but at the end, I'll share with you to make sure that you have that actionable information you can use to make something out of it and make sure that you come out stronger out of this presentation. And we will open up the floor for Q&A. Hey, yes.
Roberto, we're sorry, but we can't see your slides if you're showing them.
Okay, let's do this now. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Can you see now the agenda?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, excellent. So my apologies for that. So you only missed this one, which was only the introduction. So again, we'll give you a little bit of a guidance, if you will, as to what we're going to be covering. Let me tell you first a little bit about the SBA, particularly the Office of Disaster Assistance. And so since the 1950s, the Small Business Administration has been providing assistance to Americans. The Office of Disaster Assistance within the SBA responds to disasters. And what we do is provide affordable, long-term, low-interest loans to businesses of all sizes, private nonprofit organizations, homeowners, and renters. And this is very important because I know it is the majority of the affected individuals in this case. And we do so in order for you to be able to repair or replace real estate, personal property, machinery, equipment, inventory, and business assets that may have been damaged or destroyed by this disaster, particularly Tropical Storm Eta. We are an organization that are nationwide, or we're a federal agency, and we have our teams are basically throughout the country. There are two particular offices that I'm going to highlight, which as an applicant, you will be engaging with. Obviously, our headquarters and operations is based out of Virginia, and then you have two key operational centers, one in California, one in Georgia, which is the one that I report to. From those two locations, we deploy throughout the nation. On a regular basis, on a non-COVID day, we are actually in your neighborhood. These presentations are typically done at a center, at a community center, where we're able to engage and answer those questions. It doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do that. The bottom left corner of that slide, you have our website and our phone number. And so we encourage you, because we're only one phone call away, to be able to connect to you. When you do that, you'll be calling our customer service department, which is basically upstate New York. That is where all of our customer service center is located. When you apply, your application goes into the processing and disbursement center, which is in North Central Texas. So now you know where, depending on the level of engagement that you're given, who and where is our team that you're talking to. I'll expand a little bit about how each of those two teams play a role in providing assistance. When disaster strikes, the entire resource of SBA partners come into play. And that is starting with county agencies, emergency management, counties, and local government, our regional offices or district offices, SBDCs, which are small business development centers. You have one in your area. The women business centers, rather, and SCOPE, which is an organization of retired professionals that volunteer to provide assistance. What they do, what can they do to help both businesses and individuals, is to help you reconstruct financial records, prepare financial statements, and apply through the SBA loan application process, rather, at no cost. And this again includes individuals, homeowners, and renters. They also provide assistance to businesses whose disaster applications have either been approved, declined, or withdrawn. And I'll concentrate on the last two because the approval is obviously self-explanatory. How do you get declined? It could be as easy as having the wrong zip code, or perhaps the wrong phone number or wrong email, or not including valid contact information. The moment you apply, that application is going to go to the North Central team, North Central Texas team, rather, and they're going to start looking behind the scenes into your application. They're going to look at all the information, validating that everything is correct. If by any chance you don't have contact information, your application will go into a withdrawal state. If you have valid information, but you are missing pieces within the financial piece of that application, and we reach out to you and we don't hear from you within the allotted time, they usually give you a certain number of days to respond, your application goes into withdrawal. It doesn't mean that it's deleted. It doesn't go into a forgotten bucket. It simply stays there until you contact us again to provide that information that we need and reactivate your application. So there are nobody falls into limbo, if you will, by not replying. However, we do encourage you to, number one, make sure that information that you provide the first time around when you apply is accurate. And number two, monitor your phones and your emails, because if we ask for information, you need to respond to us within the time allowed. We also provide you with management and counseling services for the business community to help you in the long-term recovery process. Obviously, when there is a disaster, businesses have a certain position in the community where they may be a little more resilient than an individual because of their being a business, and there are certain requirements that they have for businesses, but they also suffer from difficulties in getting up and going after a disaster. And so we encourage the business owners that are listening to this to not only apply, but to remain with those relationships with the SBDCs, the women's business centers, et cetera, and the SBA, your county agencies, because we can be a resource for your long-term recovery. Last but not least, we rely on our partners and the community, regional district office, et cetera, including emergency management, to identify suitable locations where we can come in and provide this information on a face-to-face basis. So that is how we leverage basically our partners around the nation to be able to respond. Now, about Tropical Storm Eta in particular, something Hank mentioned, and I'm glad he did because it opens up to this. When disaster strikes, there are several types of declarations, but there are two main types of declarations you need to know about. There is a precedential declaration, and that depends on the scope and the level of damage that incident may have caused. The precedent may just automatically declare a presidential declaration and activate the full source or the full resource of federal agencies that may provide assistance. That includes FEMA, for example. That is when you see FEMA on the ground. When there is a presidential declaration, all of those resources are automatically activated and they go on the ground. This is an agency declaration, which means the request came from the governor. Because of this storm, even though it was a small storm, and the scope of the incident, it affected a very localized area, the Florida governor, declared a disaster, requested assistance from the SBA, and that is what brings us here. Now, that assistance is available in 3 counties, Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco counties, which means if you are located in either one of those 3 counties and suffered either physical damage or economic injury because of Tropical Storm Eta, regardless of the time that has lapsed since, you can apply for assistance for the SBA. Businesses of all sizes, private nonprofit organizations, homeowners, and renters can apply in these counties for either physical damage disaster loans or economic injury disaster loans from the SBA. Important to keep in mind, this assistance is tied to a deadline. And so the first one is coming up on March the 29th. For physical damage applications, you have up until midnight on December the 29th to apply for this assistance. And on October 28th is the deadline for the economic injury disaster loans, which is in essence working capital. If at any point anyone on the panel has a question, by all means, let me know, okay, as we go through it. So you ask yourself, why should I get into debt in order to help myself out of a disaster? And so how we differ from the bank, from a typical and standard bank loan to a federal disaster loan is we provide a little more flexibility in qualifying you into the loan, number one, and number two, in the terms of that loan. An important factor in those terms are the interest rates. We provide affordable low interest rates. And so they go as low as 1.125 for homeowners and renters, 2% for nonprofit organizations, 3% for businesses of all sizes for physical disaster loans. And then for economic injury, you have 2% for nonprofit organizations and or 3% for small businesses and small agricultural cooperatives. So those are the lowest rates you can get probably in the sense of federal disaster loans. And so that is one of the key drivers into why we ask you to consider applying for a federal loan. However, in the next few slides, I'll give you a little more information that will put you into the thinking cap and considering hopefully this one avenue, which is a very unconventional avenue, but one you have in order to recover from disasters. The types of loans. So we have physical damage for businesses and private nonprofit organizations for them to repair or replace real estate, equipment, and furniture. Businesses can apply for up to $2 million of physical damage related to Tropical Storm Eta. And then you have the economic injury. So while you have, again, a business has to repair those physical assets, the business has to be able to open the doors. They may also have suffered an interruption in revenue, for example. And so that is an economic injury. An economic injury loan allows then the business to have working capital to be able to get that oxygen the business needs in order to open the doors and get going again. That includes payroll, by the way. And so this is something that small businesses who may have had an interruption after the storm and may have suffered then opportunities to continue that revenue, they can come back to us, apply, and we could actually go back in time and see that period of time in which they lost revenue and assist them on that end, up to $2 million. Then homeowners and renters, which is the vast majority of the affected individuals during this storm, can apply for physical damages. Homeowners can repair or replace real property. Say you have to fix, patch your roof or replace your roof or patch a wall or replace a wall. That is something that we can assist you with. You can apply for up to $200,000 worth of federal disaster funding to be able to repair your home. By the same token, homeowners and renters can apply for contents for physical damage related to personal property, which includes automobiles, which is a very common need after a disaster. People lose, particularly floods, their automobiles. And so through us, you can come and apply for up to, $40,000 to either repair or replace a personal property item. Think of your computers, think of your furniture, anything that you look around as you're listening to me now, look around your home, any of that personal property that is sitting in your home and or your vehicle outside can be repaired or replaced by way of an SBA disaster loan for up to $40,000. Last but not least, and Hank is going to love this, is mitigation funding. The idea of helping you is not only to be able to rebuild stronger and to be able to plan that long-term recovery in a much healthier position, but to mitigate the effects of a future disaster and to strengthen your property or your business. And so businesses, private nonprofit organizations, and homeowners can apply for mitigation funding as part of that loan application. This will help them protect the property against the future damages from similar disasters and can be up to 20% of the verified physical damages. It is important to mention here that mitigation funding cannot be used to upgrade or expand a business or a home or to make additions. However, it is important for you to apply and have that conversation with a loan officer. So we're going to look at the particulars of your case and decide if indeed what you're trying to do qualifies within the mitigation framework, then you'll be able to qualify for mitigation funding. Okay. Any questions so far, guys?
I have a question. So for the mitigation funding, you have to have damage to be able to get mitigation funding. So to have a project done, if you want to do a project to make your home stronger, you have to have already had the flood damage to begin with.
It's a great question, Mary, and the answer is no. You don't have to actually have suffered damages in order for you to mitigate. We want you to mitigate. Remember that I said, not only do we want you to repair and replace and come back, if you will, to your new normal, we want you to come back to that new normal in a stronger position. And you can only do that by mitigating. And so, yes, talk to us, reach out to the SBA and apply. Even if you didn't suffer damages, but you're in a flood zone area, for example, and you want to elevate your property, that is a mitigation project that you can reach out to the SBA and obtain assistance with. Of course, every case is different, and that is why we encourage everyone to apply and present those particulars to a loan officer that is going to be able to evaluate that need and advise you on that end. Great question, Mary.
And Roberto, I have a question if I can, again, on mitigation. Can you clarify what you mean by upgrade? Because a lot of residents that were affected, they may have incurred the substantial damage rule and then you make improvements and updates, to code. And so that might be confusing language. So what do you mean by upgrade, I guess?
And it's a simple answer to that. And you provided part of the answer on your question, which is the word code. If there are code requirements, for example, if you're after having gone through these disasters, the county advised you that you need to bring your property up to code, and you need funding, obviously, to be able to do that. You could reach out to the SBA and apply for that funding to be able to mitigate, even if you didn't suffer the damage, as I said before, but you are required now to mitigate, or rather to strengthen your property to mitigate the effects of disaster in the future. You're encouraged to do so. And that applies to businesses as well. The applicant, in terms of mitigation funding, does not have to have suffered damages in order to qualify for mitigation funding.
I have a question also, Robert, following that same topic. If the structure was not identified as a substantially damaged structure, meaning it's not required by local ordinance to be elevated, would they be eligible for a mitigation reconstruction project?
That would be a mitigation project because, again, the idea is to minimize the effects of a future disaster. And because you're sitting in an area that is prone to not only disasters, but the flooding and all those negative effects that are as a result of a incident such as Tropical Storm Eta, we encourage you to apply. Again, each case will be handled individually. We're going to look at the property. We're going to look at the condition of the individual, whether or not you're able to repay. That's going to be on the next slide. We talk a little bit about that. But if you do have intentions to make your property stronger, to mitigate the effects going forward, by all means, we encourage everyone to apply.
So demo rebuild is a possibility?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it is, because again, if your demo means demolition, if you're basically driven to having to demolish some or your home or business in order to create to mitigate that same location, that same business, that same home, So long that it remains in the same area, in the same spot, at the same address, that qualifies for mitigation funding. And so again, that is a conversation you need to have with your loan officer. There are particulars that apply. And so we're going to be looking into those particulars to advise you in terms of how you qualify into mitigation. But I encourage everyone to apply. Yep.
Roberto, are those funds above and beyond the loans for your physical damages for homes? Is that an additional 200,000 or is that the same 200,000?
It's within the cap of the 200, okay? But depending on the circumstance, that may actually surpass the 200. And that's why I said each case is individual. So we look at the conditions around it, what brought you to that situation. Obviously, we do have that cap of $200,000 to be able to manage, if you will, the funding and distribute those fundings accordingly, but depends on the circumstances. So don't let that deter you. If indeed your mitigation project may require a little more, we're going to look at different angles. We're going to look at whether or not you have insurance, for example, and does your insurance policy covers any type of mitigation funding? Are there any other grants or assistance in the local area that can provide some level of relief to your need? Again, those are all the factors that the loan officer is going to take into consideration to maintain that $200,000 cap. But it doesn't necessarily, that is not a hard ceiling, if I can answer that in simple terms. And it's up to that 20% of verifiable damages. It's going to be that mitigation funding. Okay, great questions. Eligibility and restriction. We're going to be looking at your credit history. We're going to look at your credit rating. That doesn't mean that because you have bad credit, because you have been in bankruptcy, you're not going to qualify, as a bank would actually normally do, rightfully so, because they have a different set of standards and needs. In our case, because you're coming out of a disaster, we're going to look at that credit history to be able to evaluate your ability to repay. The idea is not to put you in a loan that is going to drag you down even more. The idea is to put you in a loan that is going to help your disaster recovery. Hence the reason we need to be sure that you have the ability to repay according to the terms then that will come out of that conversation. So that will shape the terms, that will shape the length of the term, and perhaps even the amount of the loan that you're approved, and how we work in terms of identifying, if you will, your ability to repay. Now, important to mention that only uninsured or otherwise uncompensated Tropical Storm Eta related losses are eligible by this declaration. What do I mean by that? We're in Florida, and so a lot of individuals may have uninsured or uncompensated Tropical Storm Eta. If you have insurance and you have applied for insurance and you're waiting for that insurance to respond, okay, that is not a deterrent. You should apply for the SBA assistance rather, and come to us, because once that insurance proceeds kick in, you can utilize that funding to repay the loan. And so again, that's what I mean by uncompensated. Means something that you may have applied for insurance at this time and you're still waiting for that insurance to come in. Another scenario is that you may have had $100,000 worth of damages and your insurance covered only $80,000, and so you have a $20,000 gap. You can come to us for that $20,000 gap. Again, South Florida, secondary homes, vacation properties, personal pleasure boats or airplanes or recreational vehicles and similar property are not eligible unless these are used for business purposes. An example is if you have a rental property. So let's say you reside in the area and you have both your primary residence and your rental property, and they're both located in either one of the three counties that I mentioned at the beginning. You may apply for both. You apply for your home, you apply for your rental property, so long you have the ability to prove that that is used for business purposes. Obviously, we're going to be looking at business-related documentation in terms of that second home, a rental property rather. Now, applicants who have not complied with the terms of a previous SBA disaster loan may, and we underscore and bold the word may, not be eligible. Why do we say may? Because we understand that conditions may have been difficult. You may have defaulted on a loan because another disaster affected you right after. 2020 is the perfect example, COVID-19. You may have had, as a business or individual, an interruption in income or work-related income, where you were not able to maintain your commitment with the SBA. We encourage you to apply and discuss that circumstance with us, because we're going to evaluate your individual circumstance and try to help you as best as we can. If you are unable to get into an SBA loan, we're going to try to find some local resources that can help you or assist you going forward. Now, this particular point about not complying with terms includes borrowers who may have not been able to maintain flood and or hazard insurance. Regardless of whether or not you had insurance in the past, we encourage you to go ahead and consider having that insurance now. And the next slide, I'm going to discuss a little bit about that, which is in terms of collateral and insurance. Now, in terms of, yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to remind everyone that if they do have a question, to please put it in Q&A, and then we can see that and get right to it. Thank you.
I have a question, Roberto.
Yes.
Many of the homes were, it wasn't just homes that were flooded, but residents' vehicles may have been flooded as well too, and disabled and destroyed. Does SBA loans help with that process as well too?
That falls into the personal property, and most definitely, even if your home, and that's a great question, even if your home didn't suffer, let's say you even live in an apartment, you don't own a home, but you did have a damaged vehicle that you need to repair or replace, SBA can help. And so again, so long the damage is related or stemming from Tropical Storm Eta, and you did have that need, you should apply and reach out to us for assistance to be able to get you going.
Thank you.
Yep. And so we were talking about collateral and insurance. In terms of collateral, physical disaster loans under the $25,000 mark will require collateral. Economic injury loans over the $25,000 mark require collateral, and you can get up to $50,000 of unsecured disaster business loans. That is a combination of both physical disaster loans and economic injury loans. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to decline you if you don't have collateral. As a matter of fact, we will not decline you. However, we're going to ask you to pledge what's available. That is important to keep in mind. Don't let the collateral be a deterrent for not applying. Borrowers whose damage or collateral property is in a special flood hazard area, that is most of us in Florida, will be required to purchase and maintain flood insurance. FloodSmart.gov, it's at the bottom of the slide. It's a good starting point for that. You can go there and you'll be surprised how affordable it is to actually pay for flood insurance. And so we encourage you, whether or not you apply to the SBA, to visit that website and consider having insurance, because obviously Tropical Storm Eta is one of several examples of how important it is to have that insurance. In the event that we require you to have flood insurance, that'll be the lesser of the total of the disaster loan, or the insurable value of the property, or the maximum insurance available. And so that is something that, again, is going to be part of that conversation with your disaster loan officer. Okay.
Robert, we have a question.
Yes.
Jump into that from Randall. So I already have two SBA business loans and one home SBA loan as a result of Irma. Can I still be considered for a home and a content loan?
Yes, you can. And that, again, on the next slide, we cover that, which is basically we have the power to restructure your loans, if you will. Again, we're going to be looking at the conditions of those loans, what the balances are, what the terms are, and try to be able to fit, if you will, into a new term that is going to be able to consolidate those loans and help you then with your new, let's call them that way, new disaster related needs. So yes, do apply. Again, that is important. And it's a good question because you need to disclose that as part of the application. And most importantly, make sure you raise those points with your loan officer as you have that initial discussion. So yes, I encourage them to apply. And in here, we mentioned a little bit about that. So the benefits, I said at the beginning, these are disaster loans. So why should you get into debt in order to come out of a disaster? Well, again, and I'm speaking to both the business and the individual community, we're a cash flow lender. In essence, we provide you with working capital. We do so at low interest rates, as I showed you earlier. Most importantly, there are no costs to apply or withdraw from a disaster. Think of it. You cannot walk into a bank and say, I want to loan money, initiate the process, and then turn around and walk away. You can do that here. You can come back, you can come to the SBA, apply for a loan. And if you, for one reason or another, do not feel comfortable with that loan, you walk away. There are no costs associated. There are no closing costs. Terms are flexible up to 30 years. Something to keep in mind is that if you do have credit available elsewhere, those terms may be limited to a 7-year term. That is important to keep in mind. No prepayment penalties or fees. Funds are available prior to insurance settlements. As I said earlier, do not wait for insurance, or do not let the fact that insurance is not paying what you think the entire worth of your disaster-related damages are, come to us and we can fill in those gaps, if you will. You may be eligible for refinancing or relocation. That applies to business owners, homeowners, and the relocation has to occur within a particular distance, within the particular area. And so we encourage you again to mention if relocation is part of your recovery plan, mention it as part of your application, discuss it with your loan officer because there is assistance for that as well. You may apply for mitigation funds, as we said earlier, even if you didn't suffer disaster-related losses. Most importantly, and I think this is one of the key items that we have, you don't have to make a payment within the first year after signing that promissory note. And so that is something that we do to help you, again, be able to get that oxygen and that breathing space that you need in order to be able to maintain that commitment. Damage estimates are not required. If you're talking about mitigation, we will not ask you to go out and burden yourself with an estimate you need to provide us with. All we need is a conversation about what is it that you're trying to do. You want to put in, and I didn't mention this, so it's important now that I mentioned it. Examples of mitigation could be actually hurricane shutters. Putting something as simple and important as hurricane shutters, elevating the property, as we discussed before, to mitigate the effects of flooding, adding a safe room, think of tornadoes, adding a sump pump, installing a sump pump. Those things, again, that are going to help you mitigate the effects of disaster, you don't have to give us an estimate for that. The next one, federal and state assistance. Please,
I have
go ahead.
A question.
Yep.
Would installing sewer backflow valves qualify as mitigation?
That would be, and so we encourage you again to discuss it with your loan officer. If it is something that is going to minimize the effect of that damage, and that obviously could be, I don't know if you had any related damages to that in this event, but it's typically when there's flood, that is very prone to happen. And so you're in a flood area, and so we definitely encourage you to do that.
So the same for replacing your air conditioning or hot water heater elevated, or replacing your electrical in your home to a higher elevation. If
the units were damaged by Tropical Storm Eta and you're replacing them, we encourage you to also think about ways to mitigate. If you need to elevate those units, that is a qualifying mitigation project. We don't want you to install that AC unit in the same spot where it was damaged by the storm, because what's going to happen next? You're going to have another unit, and so damaged unit. And so, yes, most definitely. We want you to think about, and that is a great question because it opens up the level of thinking, if you will, at the home level. Those homeowners start looking around, and yes, those items that were damaged, AC unit, for example, you're replacing it and you feel good that you replaced it now. You have back your AC. We're in Florida. AC means everything to us. But guess what's going to happen in the next hurricane, on the next storm, if you do not mitigate? If you don't protect that unit, it's going to get destroyed most likely in the next storm. And so, yes, please apply. That's a great question. Again, you may be eligible for referral to grants, other grants. And so that is, again, part of the conversation. And last but not least, and I mentioned it a couple of times already, there are no obligations whatsoever. You can apply. If approved, you don't have to take the loan. You can take it in segments, which means, thinking of mitigations, if you have that project set up in stages, then that's how you get your loan. You basically decide how much and when you want on the approved amount. If you're approved for the $200,000, you can distribute that $200,000 depending on your needs. If you take only $80,000 out of the $200,000 and insurance kicked in, you don't have to take the remainder. Okay. And so again, that is the level of flexibility, low interest rates, and all of this level of flexibility that we offer in order to interest you in applying for an SBA disaster loan. And this is exactly how you do that. You simply go to sba.gov/disaster. In there, you can apply electronically. You could also find all of the information that I shared here and more. And most importantly, you can call us as well to either get paper loan applications if for one reason or another you do not have access to the internet, obtain information, or connect with a specialist that can provide you with particulars within your circumstance, answers to your questions that I could not answer today here. And so you can do that any day of the week. We're open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And we're available again, just one phone call away at 800-659-2955, or by email at FOCE, which means Field Operations Center East -help@sba.gov. Very important, keep those deadlines in mind. If you need to apply, I would recommend you do so now. If you feel that you're not ready, go to the website, apply, and make sure that when you speak to that agent that calls you that tells you that you're not ready, that is when you ask for guidance. March 29th is the deadline to apply, midnight of that day. October 28th for economic injury, March 29th for physical damage applications rather. And again, throughout the presentation, I made an emphasis of our website and our phone number, but we didn't talk about preparedness, even though we emphasized on the fact that it's not a matter of if, but when, it's going to happen. And so visit ready.gov/business for the business community, and ready.gov plan for those individuals, homeowners and renters. It's as simple as having a conversation. That is a starting point of preparedness. And thereafter, the very simple steps you can take to be prepared. And last but not least, floodsmart.gov. Okay. And now we open it up for some questions. And if the group or the audience has any, I'm happy to help.
We have a question from Grace.
Yes.
We have incurred expenses for alternative living due to Tropical Storm Eta while waiting for our home to be repaired. We've heard this a lot. Are we able to include those costs in our SBA request?
Unfortunately not, because transitional living or temporary living is not contemplated within these declaration. If it was a presidential declaration, that'd be a different story. But in this case, we encourage you to look for alternative avenues such as probably insurance, or even some local agencies, some local charities that may be able to assist on that end, not on the SBA for these declarations rather.
I have a follow-up question to that, Roberto.
Yes.
So we're hearing from many of our residents that loss of use is not covered, and that's what you just addressed. But the other thing that folks are experiencing is getting storage units or the pod units to put in their driveway to store all their things because they have to vacate their houses so that it can be repaired. Are those storage facilities covered?
That be part of the conversation with the loan officer. If it is, in order to be able to repair or replace damaged property, which obviously you need to store or salvage rather property to be able to repair or replace, that may very well qualify. And so yes, apply and make sure you include that as part of your application and the conversation with your loan officer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert, so much for the presentation. I just wanted to introduce Lisa Foster, who's been asking our excellent questions. And Lisa is our county's floodplain administrator. So Lisa, do you have some more to add to this?
Sure. So with Tropical Storm Eta, which was, and it's been mentioned tonight, it was a really small storm comparatively to what we plan for and build to with our current codes. So we all really need to look at the flood risk on our properties, and we need to prepare for the flood. Roberto said it's not if, it's when it happens. And, we're seeing more frequent, smaller events. And, all those low-lying coastal areas were affected. We had about 3,000 homes or businesses that were impacted by this little small tropical storm that brushed us. And we need to really think forward, about mitigating our properties and making sure that we're prepared for the next time this happens. Get your flood insurance policy in place, get your inventory documented. I mean, take pictures, take videos, list out all the inventory in your home. One of the things that I'm hearing from our residents is it's taking them forever to just make those lists of what they had in their homes. And a lot of the things got thrown away prior to them being able to get pictures of the things. But if you have those photographs and you have that inventory list in advance, it will make it a lot easier after the event when everything is hectic. And, there are other insurance options out there that are above and beyond the NFIP. So if you want to look into the other insurance options for that loss of use, for example, I don't know how much it costs, but it's worth looking into for additional coverage. And, use this program, this SBA opportunity to build stronger now. I mean, you're repairing your homes now. So lift those ACs up, lift those hot water heaters up, or convert to the electric one. Raise your electrical if you're really, really low lying and the electrical, was damaged. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do now to look forward and hopefully not experience as much damage next time.
And when you think of preparedness, if I may add on that, Lisa, if you're not sure whether or not what you're trying to think in terms of mitigation works, reach out to us and give us a call, and just ask, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Would I qualify for a loan? That is part of the conversation. You'll be surprised what you can do to be able to mitigate the effects of a disaster, and we can help you with that.
Absolutely, and some of those things are only going to mitigate for the really small storms. Of course, if we get hit with a Category 1 or 2 hurricane, it's obviously going to be worse damage. So we need to think about, well, when that happens, are we going to replace our homes? Are we going to relocate? What are we going to do? So get that plan in place. Know what your flood risk is. We have a map service. You can go to pinellascounty.org/flooding, and there's a link over to our map service. We have all of the flood maps available on there to find out if you're in a low, moderate, or high risk area, find out what your evacuation zone is, get that coverage so that you can recover more quickly.
Very important.
Joe Boris is our operations manager for emergency management, and he's also the operations chief for our Emergency Operations Center during activations, like this tropical storm, for example. Joe, let me ask you, what would you like to add to this? What other aspects of this that people should consider?
Well, I want to thank all the attendees for attending this presentation, and thank you, Roberto, for that as well, too. And I would encourage everybody to, spread the word with your neighbors and colleagues about this opportunity from the SBA to help repair or even mitigate some of your homes and residents or even commercial businesses. Take advantage of this. I think too that, preparing for the future is very important, and that's the hazards that could befall us here in Pinellas, from tornadoes, flooding, and hurricanes. So to take this opportunity when you rebuild and repair to mitigate those things, window coverings, stronger garage doors, flood barriers. There's so many different types of flood barriers that are available today, and to take those opportunities to do that as you repair and not just, I know it's tough right now, and I know that a lot of folks are out of their homes to make these repairs, but doing that, I think will prepare them for the future and prevent, further issues. That loss of use was a big thing, and I know that's not part of this here, but acquiring that insurance, I think, is something that I'm going to carry forward as we prepare for hurricane season and make sure that folks are aware of that as well. And I see Randall has his hand up. Mary, are we able to?
I believe we did answer Randall's question. Did you have another one, Randall? Please put it in the Q&A. We do have a lot of these resources and tools, including a inventory list of items in your homes that you can work off of online, which is really helpful. It saves you a little bit of time and to try and think of everything yourself. The resource that Robert had mentioned, the floodsmart.gov, that's an excellent website. Our website, which is www.pinellescounty.org/emergency/flooding, or www.pinellas.org/flooding.
Yes.
I put emergency management into everything. But we'll go ahead and send you those links as well when we follow up with this seminar. We'll send you some of the resources that we mentioned. We'll send you a link to the video. This will be posted on YouTube as well. So you can go ahead and share that, and hopefully some other folks will be able to watch it and learn some more about this program.
Mary, our new flood map service to look up your risk is floodmaps.pinellascounty.org.
Okay, great. And that also has your evacuation zone, right?
Yes, it does.
Because flood zones are different from your evacuation.
Yes, they are.
Yes. Does any of the other panelists have anything? Does anyone else in the audience have a question?
I just encourage people to ask questions, that they, don't be afraid to ask questions, not, of your local building officials about what you can and can't do, from the SBA as well, too. And if folks do need help, the Bay Area Legal Services, it is income-based, but they are available for helping as well, too, if you have some legal questions. And especially of your insurance, too. There's many programs above what you're maybe insured for too that folks can avail themselves to. I don't know if Lisa could touch on it. The ICC, is it?
The ICC. So if you are one of the folks that was determined to be substantially damaged, meaning it was going to cost more than 50% of the value of your home to fix it, then you would need to elevate. And if you have an NFIP policy, there's a clause called ICC, increased cost of compliance. And after you bring your structure into compliance, you basically will need to build a new structure that's elevated and it's up to code. Once you do that, you'll be eligible to receive that ICC pot of money out of the insurance policy. So talk to your flood insurance agent about that. If you have questions about flood insurance specifically, we have technical assistants that volunteer their time for the county, and they are experts in the field of flood insurance, and you can get to them through pinellescounty.org/flooding and click on the insurance tab on the left. If you have any other questions, you could also call me. Just please do be aware of those substantial improvement, substantial damage rules, because if you try to do too much, you will be required to bring the structure into compliance.
And there is more information on that website as well. We have one last question, and this is a good one for the last question, because Robert, you talked so much about, every case is different. It makes me want to go ahead and talk to one of the loan officers, and they sound wonderful, and your next best friend. But we have a question from Grace. What is the timeline typically for turnaround on these loans? And that's a good question, because I was wondering that too.
It is a good question. That will depend obviously on the complexity of the loan, on the complexity of the assistance that is being required. It also depends on you providing the correct level of information at the beginning. Typically, our processor standard is 3 to 4 weeks. Our goal, rather, is to have a decision made within a few weeks after that application comes in. But you have to take into consideration the number of applicants that are coming into the pipeline, if you will. But our goal is to have it within the 4 to 6 week stops decided on with a decision rather on your loan. Ask when you have that first conversation with the loan officer, what the expectation is in terms of that turnaround, and he'll be better positioned to tell you that. But our goal is to have it within the 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. Well,
if in doubt, anybody, just call us, 1-800-659-2955. If after this you have questions and you didn't think about, pick up the phone, give us a call your local emergency manager. Just don't keep that information to yourself. Make sure you reach out to somebody to find out if you qualify for this assistance.
Okay, very good. And you can always email us at ema@pinellescounty.org. And we can make sure the question gets answered for you. All right. After the program is over, you're going to be getting sent a brief survey. If you don't mind, please taking a moment to fill that out. That really helps us with future outreach to be able to do a better job for you. I'd like to thank the guests once again for taking your time, and appreciate all this great information. I thought it was wonderful, and hopefully our residents can get some help and not just rebuild, not just fix things, but make it stronger for the future. So I think that's really wonderful. Thank you again so much. And thank you for all of you for joining us, and everyone, please be safe.